Hey guys, so I thought today we would do something a little more maybe in line with the whole graphic design in a sort of a marketing corporate kind of bent here. We're gonna make a little repeating ad. Now, if you've been to any kind of news site or any kind of like, listicle website, like as you're scrolling down, you'll probably see a little Google ad that might be something like this. It's about a 5-second repeating ad that I made for Dollar General's sort of generic medicine they have. They have a series of things. Like every little store has their own sort of generic medicine, right? Which is just the same as your brand name stuff. But, obviously, what do you trade for a brand name? You trade, time and reliability and things like that. Anyways, this right here, I thought was like, I see these a lot where like just the sort of, the elements sort of pieced together and whatnot. This was all made in Photoshop. None of this was done in any sort of video editing software. All of this was done in Photoshop because the timeline we had, we made the animated GIFs, we made stop motion animation, stuff like that. But in this case, what we're going to be doing is just sort of creating a series of just, kind of plates, we'll say. So we've got like two main scenes with this. We've got the scene with like the guy in front of the barn and the text there, and then we've got the sort of scene with like the gray gradient and then the information about Dollar General and stuff. Okay, so essentially what we're going to be doing is just sort of composing these little composites, these little like sort of designs here, and then once we do that, we'll open up the timeline and we'll start animating them together. So you should have in your Dropbox this sort of Dollar General logo and this picture I found of their allergy medicine, and then this guy sneezing and this barn, right? I thought perhaps, hey, fall allergies, right? There's a whole host of things that bloom, like ragweed and a variety of things that bloom in the fall. Everyone, as soon as the seasons change, everyone's like, oh my goodness, I've got these little allergies happening here. So I thought it would be like, and here we are, we're in fall. So let's go ahead and open up Photoshop, and let's start off with the barn. I already have the barn open here. I'll just open that up. Just open it up in there, and let's start off by cropping it. So let's find our crop tool here. And you've probably noticed this before, but if you look up at the top corner, whenever you open up your crop tools, you've got a series of choices here. You have the original ratio. This will lock it in just to being like the same sort of height and width, ratio proportions as the original images. And in this case, we're going to choose square, 1:1 square, right? And just sort of position that to where you can see the barn. Maybe the barn can be pushed off to the side. Make sure that we don't have any, sort of blank space here. Now, if you notice this, you notice like it seems as if it's sort of filling up with black as we go through. That's only because black is the background color. If you had white, it would show up as white. Sometimes I think the alpha channel shows up, but at any rate, we'll just have this be kind of chilling on here off to the side. That's good. As soon as you're ready, press enter. We're at this little check mark here. And let's go ahead and drag in our guy. I'll find my guy. Man about to sneeze here. So just pull that in. This is an interesting little photo here. I actually had to just break down and go to Google image search because I could not for the life of me find a single image of someone about to sneeze that I thought worked well on Pixabay, Unsplash, or Pexels. So I went ahead and found this. This was from like a news story that someone had written. So underneath the little Google image search, there's always a little note that says this image may be subject to copyright, and sure enough, it probably is. But we're using it, just we're not making any money off of this. We're not interfering in the sort of marketability of this, and it's all for education. So it sort of falls under fair use. But as always, as I always say, make sure that you're not like tripping on anything, because as soon as you use something that might be copyrighted, it's not just you who becomes liable for that, it's your client as well, and we never want to hurt our clients. So I'm just going to grab my quick selection tool and sort of just select the outside of this guy here. I'll hit the little plus button and select the other side here, and that's a pretty clean thing. Once again, we hold on the Alt key and we hit the mask tool. That'll mask out everything else here. And I'll get my brush tool. I'll have it be black, and also sort of brush out some of the rest of the stuff that's kind of happening here. All this jazz, and down here as well. I might even shrink it down some and just sort of like kind of get rid of that little, get rid of that little kind of flat space there on the top of his head, just to kind of round it out a little bit there. That's probably good. Okay, so that'll make it less noticeable. It'll only be here for a second. So once again, you want to make sure that when you do this, let's see if we can do this. Clean this up as best you can here. There's a little bit of background information on the sides, but that's okay. Anyways, let's see if we can't kind of like make him blend a bit better. I'm gonna just click on the curves adjustment layer. And I'll make sure this is a clipping mask. And I think his brightness is fine, but if we want to make it more green, we have to pull down our reds, right? Our reds will make it a little more green. The opposite of red in this color environment is green. And if we want to make it, less aqua, we can pull our blues down, which will introduce a little more yellow into it. So maybe not quite so much yellow. And it's really looking okay. I'll just pull the highlights down a little bit, maybe shadows too, some. So these look some more green here. And as far as the green goes, I can just like sort of maybe crank down the highlights slightly so it doesn't look quite so sickly. That's okay. Okay, and pull up the shadow some. That's okay. All right, so I think he fits in a bit better now, and great, cool. Okay, so what we want to do now is we can actually just select both of these. Hold down Shift, select both these layers, right-click on it, say Convert to Smart Object, and so all the adjustments and the layer mask become a part of the Smart Object. If I ever double-click on this, I can just go over here, and I can actually edit the Smart Object here. I don't really care to right there, so but that's an option you always have. Okay, so with this right here, I'll just click my little text tool here and just up at the corner in the sky, I'll just write this message here, fall allergies. I'll make a little line break, got you down. And let's see if we can't shrink this down some to fit. Let's, I'm going to hold down Shift. We don't want it to be stretched. I'm using Century Gothic as my text. I just wanted something clean, kind of on in the same vein as like Helvetica. And we always want to make sure we have enough sort of space off from the side here. Just give yourself a little bit of space from the edges. We call that padding, a little bit of padding from the edges there. So do give us some room to move here. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to unlock my background here. I'm going to make all this. I'm going to hold down Shift and just Control G on the keyboard, which I'll put into a group, and I'll just call this. Let me just call this like plate 1, and we'll just sort of make that invisible for now. And what we'll do here is we'll make a new gradient, and we'll just make any gradient you like here. I'm going to make mine black and white, and as usual, I'll make it a radial gradient, and want to make it sure it's going from white to black, and I'll scale it up a little bit here from 250 or so, just to give just like a really slight gradient to where it just sort of slightly darkens on the side, almost like a vignette. And if you'd like, you can right click on this, convert to a smart object, and maybe sort of, for instance, go to filter, go to noise, go to add some noise, and just give a little bit of texture here. Not too much noise, because when we scale it down to make a GIF, it's not going to be all that noticeable. So once again, right click on these. I'll just what we'll do is we'll rasterize it first, and then we'll make it to a smart object, just to make everything a smart object. All right, smart object, and I'll drag it down below, and let's go ahead and make a new text layer here, and I'll just say $general has you covered, and we'll just period. Once again, shrink this down to kind of fit inside this little space here, and we can go ahead and bring in our allergy medication. Drag it in, shrink it down some to fit, line it up, shrink it down a little bit here, and we can just get our magic wand tool. Let's get the magic wand, and we'll just click on the white, which will select all the white, Alt and mask, and we can then right click on this and convert to a smart object. So that way it's just the cutout there. So good, cool. Make sure that's lined up. Good, and then we can get our text tool here, and as far as I could tell, these all cost, all their generic like 24 softgel tabs are $4.50 each, right? And so we can kind of like position that. We can make it bigger if we wanted to, just to make sure everyone's aware of the price hierarchy inside your text here. So I'll select these two, and I'll make sure they're centered together. Okay, that's good. All right, neat. Okay, so with that being said, what we can do is we could just select all these guys here, and then we can Control G, make them into a group, and I'll call this plate 2. The reason why I'm calling them plates is because I don't want to. Anyways, what we'll do is we'll finally bring in the Dollar General logo, which is a big logo here. So we'll drag it into Photoshop. And we can kind of shrink it down slightly. We can hold down Shift and Alt to keep it centered, as well as maintaining the proportions. Okay, so now let's make everything visible, and let's go to our timeline. So let's go to, first off, I'll make plate 2 invisible for now, and I'll make this one invisible as well. So let's go over here to Window and choose Timeline. And it's going to give you this little thing that says Create Video Timeline, or you can create frame animation. We're going to click Create Video Timeline. And I'm actually going to like make this a good deal bigger, because we have a lot of stuff that we're going to be looking at. And just to make sure everything's a little bit easier to see, I'll just shrink this down, Control, and press the minus button there. So let's start animating here. Whenever we animate with this timeline here, we want to basically just, we want to be able to see where in this timeline we've got. In this case, it's about 5 seconds. If it defaults to something different, I want to say we can go over here. We can like set timeline frame rate or panel options. I want to say we can move and trim here. Let's see, here, move, start to play, and trim and trim. I want to say we can just keep this about 5. This is probably good. And if we wanted to, I want to say we could just sort of like drag this outwards, probably. New. Okay, that's fine. Let's keep it whatever it defaults to. That's probably good. Okay, so what I'll say here. Oh, 50%. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on plate 1, and we'll just put this little button down here. And we want to basically, it works in a series of what we call keyframes. So hit this little stopwatch button here. It creates a keyframe, which is sort of like a point in time during which we all have like our in this case, our opacity, how clear it is, set. It's all event forward to about 10 frames, and I'll hit this little diamond button again. And so right now, the keyframes essentially have the opacity set to 100, a part of like these 10 frames, about a third of a second. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to my opacity, I'm just drag my opacity down to 0. And if I press this little play button, it'll show us all fading in like this, right? Cool. Okay, so let's animate the other guys here. So if I'll already get you down, what we'll do is we'll what we can do is this. Let's actually go over here. What we'll do is we'll click on this guy, and we'll hold down Shift and click on this guy, and let's go ahead and create a transform keyframe for both of these. Click on the little stopwatch for transform, and then we can kind of drag our timeline back here a bit, maybe like, you know, another, yeah, how about a third of a second? It's probably good. Or maybe like a half, like a little less. And we can just have them move slightly here. Once again, we'll just click the little keyframe here for both of these, and I'll just hold them both down and just drag them both down, holding down Shift while I do it, just till this guy gets out of frame here. And so what we can do here is we can actually just sort of like pull these keyframes back. So I'm just going to click on both these keyframes, hold down Shift while I do it, and I'll pull Fall Allergies Get You Down. That'll be sort of, that'll jump in really fast. And then this guy right here, this guy will jump in really fast too. Maybe right afterwards or right before. We'll have it come in right before. Let's see what that looks like. How about we just have this be a little further back here, so it looks like it's moving while it becomes. All right, maybe we can even have this guy be a little less high up. Let's see, transform. Let's have this guy be right about maybe here. And so let's play this. There we go, that's good. All right, followers get you down. We can even have them, why not? Why not have them just be happening at the same time? All right, okay, cool. So that's great. So say about maybe like 2 seconds in, we can have them all fade away. And so what we can do is just set our opacity keyframe here, and about 2 seconds in, set it again, and then set our opacity to 0 for this whole group. So let's take a look at this. What we got? It goes. And then we read this for a little bit here, about 2 seconds, and it fades away. Fantastic. All right, cool. So let's bring in plate 2 here. And I'll just collapse these keyframes over here. I'll just collapse, I'll just get you down. I'll collapse plate 1 altogether. And then I'll open up plate 2. And we can do the same thing here. So we know that at 2 seconds, that's when everything disappears. So with plate 2, let's have it start maybe a little bit before 2 seconds. Let's open up our little thing. Let's click on opacity, and we'll just drag it forward, say like, you know, 10 frames or so. and we'll hit another one here. And so what we'll do for the first one, once again, we'll have this be set to 0 opacity. And so this will fade in as that's fading out. So the kind of cross fade is what we call that in the video editing terms. And we can just do the same thing here. We can go over here to our transform keyframes and just sort of like within this have these guys sort of move upwards. So what we can do is we can just have them, you know, move in different ways. So 450, maybe you can have that hang out here. This little button up here, this little triangle on its side is the go to next keyframe, and so I can just click on that and just have a new keyframe made. I'll make a new keyframe for each one of these guys right about here. I'll hit a transform and transform, and we can even have these guys moving at different rates and stuff. So let's just I want to stagger this up a little bit. So let's see here, transform. So I can have 450. Let's click on transform, which will bring this up. I'll just click on this guy, and I'll just have, maybe I'll have him be over this way. And then over here with this fella, with presenter, new keyframe. Maybe I have him. Oops. Click on transform. I'll just click on right there, just sort of drag him off to the side this way. And then for the Dollar General has you covered. Transform presenter here. I can just click on this guy here and then maybe drag him up. And so they all come in from different sides. Okay, so let's see what this looks like right here. Make sure you press enter. That's what lets you do anything. All right, what do we got so far? All right, Fallout got you down. Let me fade out. There you go. They all come together. That's fantastic. All right, cool. So then let's see here. Let's have these guys be on here for about 2 seconds, and then maybe about 4 seconds in. So between here and there, say about 10 frames, 20 to 24, we can have them fade out by having, once again, yawn opacity keyframe checked here, and then checked here. And then over here, we can bring the opacity down to 0. So they all fade away. Great, cool. All right, so I'll collapse plate 2, and let's take a look at our Dollar General logo here. Let's bring that into visibility. And so we know, once again, that about 4 seconds is where they disappear. They disappear about 4 seconds in. So let's have this guy start coming in a little bit before that. And so I'll hit my opacity keyframe here, and I'll maybe have it come in a little bit after 4 seconds. And the first one, I'll turn the opacity down to 0. And let's see, we can't play this real quick. Not good. Okay, that's cool. And then from here, we can maybe do like a little transformation. We can just go from, say for instance, we'll click on transform, and we'll set 2 keyframes here. This is probably a good size to end in, so maybe I want to make this a little bit smaller on at the beginning, so have it kind of grow into existence. And so here's my Dollar General. For some reason it's really big, whatever, I resize it. So hold down Shift and Alt, have it be centered, and maybe shrink it down just like a little bit on either side. So let's take a look at this. Wait, press enter. There we go. It's kind of cool. All right, and then if you wanted to, you could even have it fade away right before everything ends. Since it's like maybe like 5 frames, you could have it fade out here, just so it repeats seamlessly. And opacity once again, new keyframe, drag the opacity down like there. Let's take a look at this. Let's see how this goes. Down. As you covered. It's going a little slower than 5 seconds, I want to say. There you go, Dollar General. And it goes away. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and I think it's about right. We can do a number of things here. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and just so we don't lose anything, I'll call it EG GIF. Oh no, I don't want to do that. 2, right? And press OK. Dollar General GIF. And let's go over here to image, and let's go to image size. And let's set the image size. From whatever it is, whatever we got right now, I'm going to make it about 500 pixels wide and press OK. And let's just double check to make sure that looks okay. It's Control 0. All right. All right, so for some reason that caused old boy to disappear and other guy to disappear. Okay, I'm gonna undo what I just did. Step backwards. Okay, so instead of resizing it, I thought it was gonna happen. Let's just double check that this is all good here. All right. So instead of resizing it here, what we can do instead is resize it as we export. So once again, we go to File, Export. Now, you may have seen this Export As. Export As works well when you have like artboards. Photoshop has this artboard function, which we're going to explore later on, much like Adobe Illustrator does. But when we use Export As, you can actually choose which artboards are saved as what. So we always export with Save for Web Legacy. Which I guess that means they're going to eventually replace that with something else. So this is going to take a second to load this up. This is still fairly big. It's not gigantic, but it's still fairly big for an animated GIF. So I'm just going to make it be 500 pixels by 500 pixels. I'll press save. I'm just going to take a second for that to load. Just wait, give that a second here. And you could just name it whatever you'd like. Press enter. It'll save. And let's see what we got here. DG-GIF 2 right here. There we go. That looks good. Repeats pretty flawlessly. It goes a little faster when you actually look at it. I want to say if I were to open this up in like Internet Explorer, it might look even different. Yeah. Not so much. Looks pretty much like the same. Okay, so very cool. So this is just a good use, a good kind of exploration of the timeline functions and the various functions we have. We used this a little bit when we did our little parallax and stuff. So this is obviously a little bit of video editing, one might say, because we're kind of editing motion and stuff like that. But this is an important part of online advertisement, sort of a repeating ad that catches the eye. If it's not repeating, then it definitely has this sort of look to it, this sort of square look with these sort of big blocky text, and you can see all the text is to the point. All the text is sort of like we're sort of solving this problem of like how are we going to catch people's eye. The pink on the white I think is a good contrast. All right, good. So just turn this in as a GIF. Can't wait to see you guys do. See you in class.